Our guest is Jean-Pierre BRIOT, who is in at Université de Sorbonne. What is the particular name of your lab, Jean-Pierre?
The lab is LIP6, LIP6. Actually, the name comes from Laboratoire d'Informatique de Paris 6. But the point is that the Paris 6 University was named also Pierre et Marie Curie, actually dissolved or was merged with Paris 4 to become 2 years ago, 2 years and a half ago, yeah, as the new Sorbonne Université. So now the name is still LIP6, although Paris 6 doesn't exist anymore. Yes. And it's a CNRS, joint university and CNRS research lab. And actually, my position is as a research professor at CNRS. But anyway.
Now, just a few of the highlights. So now you described that your general research interest is in the design of intelligent, adaptive, and cooperative software at the crossroads of AI, distributed systems, software engineering, and various applications to the Internet of Things, decision support systems, and computer music. But this time you'll be talking largely, but not exclusively, about computer music. And AI techniques such as deep learning within music creation. So you've also written a book, a reference book on deep learning techniques called Deep Learning Techniques for Music Generation, Heidelberg Springer. There we are. Okay. And now with that, I pass it to you, but I see that you're not sharing. You should be sharing.
Oh, okay, because I went back
to show the book. Yes.
Hello to everyone. I'm very pleased, very honored to be part of this very famous seminar and be invited by a famous Stephen Arnaud. One of his paper about grounding problem was one of my and it's still very fundamental publication that I read when I started as a PhD student. So I'm glad to meet you in person. And so let's start.
It's shocking to hear that someone who read my paper when they were just starting is now retiring.
So I will try to give some a little bit of introduction. So probably some of you already have a good knowledge or even expert knowledge about AI-based music generation, especially deep learning based and neural network based. And some not. So of course, it's always a challenge to find the good level of detail. So I won't talk too much about technique, but I want to at first to show some examples and recent examples, mostly in music, but as well as you will see in image generation, and to talk a little bit about the foundation. Even for those of you who don't know about neural network, don't worry, I will try to introduce the basic idea, which is actually very simple in just 2 slides. And then after that, I want to go to an important issue, that is the issue of evaluation of the music generated. That is how of course, how do we human beings evaluate it, and then from that to talk about actually a big divergence between two options. One is to try to make the computer generate completely in an automated way music. And the other way around, the other branch, which I personally find more interesting, and that I will argue about that, to use the computer as a kind of assistant to actually push the human beings, the musician, the composer, etc., to do music maybe that he wouldn't be able to even think about it without the help of the computer. And then I will talk about some issues, technical issues, but again, not getting into detail, more also some issue about, artificial creation and etc. So let's start with some examples. So this example actually was created by the Google team, the Magenta and the DeepMind team in 3 years ago for the anniversary of the birth of Johann Sebastian Bach. And the idea is to create some automated accompaniment of a melody that the user can interactively create on the screen, and the system will create the counterpoint-based 3 voices accompaniment based on the expertise of Johann Sebastian Bach, based on learning from the corpus of the chorale. So let's see the one example for result. So if you're expert, you will see that some notes are not perfect. So it's not a perfect system, and but the result is actually rather good. And so,
excuse me for interrupting you.
Yes.
Do you not want to show the slide with the notes, because they weren't very easy to hear, and you're showing the deep creation slide? Do you want to show?
Let's start again. So actually, in black is the melody that the user typed, and I could show the interactive in a browser, but it will create more in and out of Zoom and sharing the screen. So I prefer to keep it simple. Anyway, so the creation by the computer actually is the red notes, the green notes, and the blue notes, which correspond to the 3 counterpoint voices, the alto, bass, and the third one I just tenor. Yes, thank you, tenor, exactly. Yeah, so which were created by the system. But let's move on and let's see an example of system by a colleague named Gaëtan Adjeres, who was actually a co-author of the book that you mentioned. And it's a more advanced system. And you will see that the rendering, the sound, actually, it's using some kind of flute digitalized sound, so the sound is better. Also, there's more respiration. There's some fermata and point d'orgue in French. And so let's see the result. So it's some kind of more advanced system. The sound is better. You could even listen to the inspiration by the flutist, and but the principle is the same. It's based on the 352 corpus of of a chorale by Bach, and to create a new chorale based on the style which has been learned by the machine learning system. And now let's see another example by Google. And this time the corpus of music is piano music. And interesting is that this is based on the MIDI recorded events of music, but based on not scores, but on actual performance, actually taken by from a competition by Yamaha with a pianist, and so which were recorded. And so you will see that because of that, the music appears more humane and less mechanical, because there's a variation of tempo, more respiration, and also of dynamics also. And it's using a transformer architecture, which is the one of the most advanced architecture that I will tell you very quickly about later on. So I stop here. So it's rather impressive, and one of the, you could see that there are some modulation. And there's some kind of structure, which is one of the issue of for generation having because usually the music generated gets boring very quickly actually, and with this architecture with some mechanism named attention in a way where the machine learning architecture will look at the most interesting parts of the sequence where to look at. Automatically the structure is getting better, although still if you listen for more like a few minutes, it starts to get a bit boring. One more example now on the audio domain by OpenAI, another AI institution based on using deep learning to create art, and not just art, but music and text, and for instance GTP3 for doing text generation. And so now they are creating audio based on this first example on Elvis Presley music, and this is controlled, actually parameterized by the text, which is also created in another step by the system. So the text is partly absurd, as you will see. And so let's see the result for Elvis. So you see, from dust we came with Hubble start, from dirt to lipid to cell to heart. So the words are very interesting, and you will see the results.
From dusty tiny fumble scarf, dirt the lip hitch tells the heart. When my toe slips, when my hair assisted fine.
So you can follow the text.
With a mind, dusty days, but you help from dirt the tears that picture rack.
So from dust we came with little help. So but it looks, of course, the sound is not perfect, but it's rather impressive. So now we can do the same. They did the same with Frank Sinatra music.
It's Christmas time and you know what that means. Oh, it's hot tub time.
Oh, it's hot tub time.
This year will be in a tub. Oh, it's hot tub time.
So the idea is the same. They fed actually the architecture with a lot of examples of Frank Sinatra music, and they could create some new kind of Frank Sinatra song based on audio and not on the scores. And again, they can control actually parameterize the generation based on the letters, the words. So another one more example is this time not about music but about painting. Maybe you heard about it, and because it the painting was sold at auction at Christie's, and for a large amount of money, and it was created by a deep learning architecture named generative adversarial, actually creative adversarial networks, that I will talk just slightly about the idea later on. And it was fed, the architecture was fed with about 15,000 paintings from different epoch and different styles. And of course, so they generated various paintings, artificial paintings from the architecture, and the authors of the system actually selected some paintings that they found more interesting. And this is another example now, grand public application where you can tunify, make like a cartoon from a picture. For instance, this is made from my own picture, and it exaggerates the eyes, etc. And it's online. You can try it if you like. And all is using this deep learning architectures, and it's working rather well. So now I would like just to go back in time and to explain the context in which all these current systems take part, and where they came from. So the computer music, actually, the idea of using a computer to make some music started in the 50s. So very soon after the creation of computer science, actually. And in 1957, there are both two achievements. The first generation of sound music, of course, with a very poor sound if you look at the music generated by computer and digital synthesizers now, and also score generated by a computer. So let's look at the score generated, which was actually after that, it's a quartet which was played by a real quartet, actually. And so let's listen to it.
V is
So,
the Iliac Suite for String Quartet is a
sorry. It looks, well, contemporary music style, which actually makes it more difficult to evaluate. And again, the rendering is done by human violinists, so which takes a big part in the quality of the result. And the composers, or the meta composers, actually they were both physicists and computer scientists and also musicians, and they created by hand some computer model for the music. Based on, they used the Markov chains, not neural networks, and also filtering rules to filter, put some constraints actually. And now neural networks are very much used, but the Markov model are still very much used. But you have also generative grammars, constraints, etc. Various kind of models which could be used to produce, to generate music actually. And the same, not only to generate scores, I mean the composition, but also to generate sound. So I won't get into detail. And for instance, most of current synthesizers now are completely software based, and they are no more analogic, and they use samples as well, of course. So now a big issue is, okay, these models for generation of music, are they done by hand? Are they specified by hand? For instance, the case for the ILIAC suite. Why was it named ILIAC suite? Because ILIAC was the name of the computer, actually at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign in 1957. So the problem is you need to be an expert, and it's very it's tedious process, and it's also error prone. So the good idea of using a machine learning technique is that you can learn the model actually from examples. That is, the machine learning process will be able to learn again a model from a corpus of examples. So that this means that also it's automatized, and also it's completely style free, because it's agnostic a priori. That is, if you train the system on, for instance, a corpus of blues music, then it will learn the style of blues. If you train it with back chorals, it will learn the style of back choral. If you train it with contemporary jazz, it will learn that style, etc. And if you train it with serial dodecaphonic music, it will learn the style of, and be able to generate that style. So actually, you can learn at the same time, or in a separate way, melodies, but also harmony, that is the cadences of chords, and also orchestration, production, and again, to learn everything at once, or, which is even more interesting, learn and generate the models for the different steps, actually, and to be able to mix them in order to do some sophisticated modeling and creation. That's the idea. So now I will just give a quick reminder about neural network. Actually, don't worry if you don't know about it, because it will be quick. And actually, neural networks are, for me, are basically a pipeline, a suite of linear, rather actually logistic regression layers. So these are successive layers of logistic regression. What is, if you don't remember what is linear or logistic regression, don't worry. I'll show you the example here. Here you have a picture of a dog, which is pixelized with a low resolution, and every pixel actually will get into one of the input node of the architecture. Okay, and then all every node will be connected to all nodes of the next layer and so on. And how does it work? The data actually will enter from the input layer and will get up to the output layer. And how does it work? For every node of every layer, it will take the inputs of all the previous nodes of the previous layer and sum them, but with a weighted sum. That is, you have some weights, connection weights for every, for instance, for all these input nodes. And these connections, these weights, they will be adjusted during the training. So the idea is that on the right side, the output corresponds to the probability of classification of, for instance, a dog or a cat or elephant, etc. So the highest score means that it's more likely to be a dog, and because it's a dog indeed, so that's the network works well. It does a good classification. So now. So now, suppose that during the training phase, we show again a picture of a dog, but the result, the output, it says that it's 50% chance to be a cat. So it's wrong, actually. So then we need to tell the network, okay, you're wrong, and to adjust the connections, the weights, in order to correct the answer, the output. And so the idea is to use the partial derivative for each weight actually, and to know what is the direction, if we need to increase or decrease the weight, and to do some optimization in order to search for better adjustment values for the weights. And then you do it various cycles in order to adjust that for the system, the architecture, to be able to classify and to predict well. And the idea is that based on that, after you will show new image of dogs or cats that he has not seen beforehand, but he will be able to generalize what he has learned to do a good prediction, a good classification. Basically, that's the idea. And why is it's named deep learning? Because you have a lot of successive layers of logistic regression, and that way the system will abstract from raw data more and more higher level abstractions until the final classification or prediction. So deep learning is basically a neural network, artificial neural networks, but with lots of data, lots of computing power, and it started actually to replace lots of traditional techniques, for instance, for source separation, for translation, etc. It's used in lots of domains now. So, but the recipe is still very simple, actually, optimization and basically logistic regression. So, if you want to apply it to music generation, so let's go back to the example of back chorals. So we will create an architecture, a network, which has one input, which are the notes of the melody, the initial melody, soprano melody, and which will generate as the output the notes corresponding, the score actually, for the alto, tenor, and bass voices, right? So you need to represent music. So one of the easiest ways to use what is named the piano roll, where every line corresponds to a note, okay, a pitch, and every column corresponds to a time interval, actually, a time step. And then you transform actually the score into these values corresponding to this representation. Put these values as input to the nodes, entry nodes, and train the network. And when it's trained, you can create, in this case, you create the counterpoint accompaniment corresponding to the melody based on the style of Jean-Sébastien Bach chorals. So let's see, for instance, now an example of creation of a chorale based on an existing melody. This is actually God Save the Queen, so it's unfortunate timing with the recent loss of United Kingdom Queen. So let's see the result. Etc. So the rendering is more organ style, but the style again of the free voices of accompaniment is based on the style of chorale counterpoint by Jean-Sébastien Bach. Although I will pass this because time is always flying like an arrow. It was just to show that actually some very early work in using neural networks to do music generation were actually the ferment, the seeds for very more recent techniques. But I will pass that, right? And so basically, what I showed is the example of architecture I showed is named the feed-forward or multi-layer perceptron. It takes some input and generates some output. In that case, applied to the chorale accompaniment generation, it takes as an input the melody, and it generates the free voice corresponding voices. But you have but this means that the size of the duration is fixed. And for instance, so you can use a recurrent architecture. I won't get into a detail, but which is where you will generate, note after note, and then you can generate arbitrary long melody or sequence of chords. And you have recently some architecture named the generative architecture, which are really dedicated to generation, to content generation, as opposed to the standard neural network architecture, which actually were dedicated to do prediction and classification. And the two main ones are autoencoders, just to show the basic idea. It's very simple. It's some network which is symmetrical. That is, it's like a mirror. I mean, the output is a mirror to the input. And the hidden layer, layer of neurons, of nodes, actually is as a cardinality, as a size much smaller, and the point is that you train that network with the same melody as the input and as the output expected. So in a way, because the inner layer is smaller, fewer nodes, it forces the network to try to compress the information for various kind of examples of music, and to try to abstract and to find what is common representation and what is variable, actually. And in that way, you force the architecture, the neural network architecture, to learn a model, actually, abstract model of the examples of the style. And then in a generation mode, you can explore values for the inner layer and generate corresponding score, or in case of music, or audio corresponding to the value. So you can navigate actually in the space of 3 or 2 or more nodes of the inner layer to create actually arbitrary music corresponding to the style. And you can even do some interpolation. You can do also some arithmetic that is on the vector corresponding to, name the latent vector, latent layer there. I will show you the idea. Here you train, it's easier to understand with pictures, with image. So you train actually the layer, the architecture, the autoencoder with various pictures of faces of human beings. And you actually select the ones in all the examples, the ones with mustache, the one who are young, the one who are smiling, the one with glasses, etc. And you compute the average latent vector corresponding to all faces with glasses, for instance. So you have, in a way, some attribute which corresponds to vector, which correspond to the idea of glasses. And then if you add this vector to the vector, to the latent vector representation corresponding to any kind of human face, you can recreate the face with glasses or with mustache, with smiling, etc. And this is not a copy paste on the picture. It's really a recreation of. So you can see, for instance, on the last column, all the first column faces with glasses, with mustache, with smiling, etc., eyes open, etc. And you can do the same with music. And so I will skip this. And the second architecture, which is very used for and generative architecture, is named generative adversarial networks. And the idea, I would just try to give the idea, is actually it's close to a Turing test. So the idea is you have 2 networks, one generator which will generate fake artificial actually samples, which it will try to make the artificial samples indistinguishable from the real. So it's like for instance, for a counterfactor, which is trying to make some fake money. And so you have the policeman, the agent, which tries to distinguish, to decide if it's a fake money or real sample, real money. And you actually train both networks simultaneously. So the generator gets more and more expert into trying to fool the discriminator, which also gets better and better at discriminating the fake and real samples. And as a result, you can throw away the discriminator, and the generator is being able to generate very, very good quality fake samples. So let's see an example here. For instance, all these photographs are not photographs. They're actually generated from a generative adversarial, GAN, generative adversarial network, and they look real. They look like real people, where actually they're completely synthetic, and the network has been trained on a database of 2,000, more than 2,000, 200,000, sorry, pictures of real people. So if you want to see more, to know more about the different architecture, the strategy for generation, etc., so you can have a look at the book. There's open version, actually, archive open version as well. And I will get now for the final part of the talk, actually, on the topic of evaluation, which is very important, actually. How do we evaluate the quality of the music generated? So one way is to try to compare, like the GAN ID, actually, that I just showed, to compare the fake chorals generated by the neural network architecture and the historical chorals created by Bach himself, and to show, actually, to make some people, some human experts or non-experts, to listen to some music without saying if it's fake or not, artificial or artificially made, or real music from Bach, and the audience has to try to decide if it's a fake or it's a real, actually. So it has been done, for instance, for Deep Bach that I showed with on the Dutch channel with real experts and real people. And actually, even for experts, sometimes it's difficult to decide if it's real or not. But in terms of musicality, it's not very interesting. In terms of kind of research about the AI and the capacity for Turing test, musical Turing test, it's interesting. But for the music generated, it's usually not very interesting for the experts so much as it's interesting for the general audience. And one of the reasons is that the machine learning technique learns very well the style. So it generates samples very conformant to the style, which is the objective, but not very original. So actually, and one of the problem also, especially, is the lack of structure. That is, after a little while, I said that already before, the music starts to get boring. So for elevator music and for small music for documentary or for video clip or for commercial, it's okay. Actually, it depends what you expect. So, for instance, there are various little companies using deep learning techniques or other techniques where you can they can generate music really on the fly, based on some parameters, and with some business model for the music. That is, if you pay a little more, you get the copyrights for the music generated, the rights for the music generated, actually. And I show you some example of music generated. So it's a kind of ambient music, but it's yeah. But for real musician, it's okay. It doesn't get really really interesting after a little while. So actually, the two objections of musicians, I mean professional musicians, is that it lacks structure. That is, the music tends to lose momentum after only a minute or so. And so it gets boring, in other words, quickly. And also, it's not very creative. But actually, if now we change the paradigm and don't expect the system, the machine learning based system to create, artificial system to create music completely on its own, but if we use it to create some building blocks of music that the musician will be able to arrange, adapt, compose its own way, then it can get more interesting and more creative. So also it's a better way for the musician to really appropriate the music generated by the artificial system. So let's see some example of a band named Yacht, for Young Americans Changing High Technology, who is electropop music. It's, you will see, and they made some parsery with Google Magenta project, which is one of the big team working on deep learning based art creation, and they composed the album using various architectures from Google Magenta library. So let's see, let's listen a bit to the result.
Just to make that sound.
So actually, you can see that there's some voice, woman voice. So there are some instruments, some synthetic instruments, and there are some words as well. And actually, all the pieces, the loops, basics, I will tell more details in the next slide, of music is generated by the system, and the video as well, and the words. The text actually is also generated by the system, and it could create some interesting wording. For instance, you can see in another music, I can feel it in my head like a dog in bed, which is, or I want your phone to my brain. This is interesting. So how did they work? Actually, they use the neural network architectures to create the melodies and the chords, actually through a lead sheet that is the chords and the melody at once. Also the rhythm. The lyrics were also created with the same kind of architecture. The sounds, actually the synthesized sounds that they are using, and the image and videos as well. But what they did is that they use this kind of pieces of music, this 4 bars long loops of melody and chords and rhythm, and they selected within all which was created by the system, and they could transpose it, and they could also produce it. That is to decide, for instance, this melody will be sung by the woman, or this melody will be played by the bass, or this melody will be played by a synthesizer, a keyboard style synthesizer. So the rule, the constraint that they defined themselves was to only use the material of the generated by the system. That is, not to use any more notes from their own input, and just select and compose and transpose and produce. And also they decided the training examples were their own records for the music. So in a way they kept their own style. And for the lyrics, they use also their own previous lyrics, and in addition, some lyrics from bands that they like Talking Heads and Leonard Cohen, actually. And actually, for musician, it's also more interesting, because in a way you appropriate the creation, the generation, better than if you let the computer completely alone doing the job. It's named actually the IKEA effect by a psychologist, and that actually if you participate in the making, you will like better the result. And there's an interesting example, for instance, that my friend and colleague François Pachet provided me. It's a company which created some powder, to make a cake. So basically, you had just to put some water, add some water, put in an oven, and make a cake. And it didn't work very well. So what they decided to do is to do the same, but just to remove the eggs. And then the user, the consumer, had to add to the powder eggs. And then the product was much more successful because actually there was more participation of the user, final user. So what I find it more interesting exactly is to do some systems, some environment to help the musician to compose and produce music. So let's see some example of such a system named the Flow Composer, which based on constraints and Markov chains, but could be redone again now with neural networks. And it's already done partly. And so let's see, I will use the demonstration.
Je vais tenter de créer un nouveau morceau sur la page Flow Machine. Je commence par ouvrir une partition vierge. Là, je choisis le song set American Songwriters parmi une centaine de...
So you can select the corpus of music. For instance, there you select Broadway, jazz music. OK.
Fais quelques réglages, pas trop de notes courtes et pas trop d'accords.
And you will
J'obtiens un
generate...
premier résultat.
So it's it's a lead sheet that it's both the melody and the chords, right? And
9 chansons américaines dans le style. J'obtiens un premier résultat. Puis un autre.
If you don't like it, you can generate another one. It corresponds to the style, the corpus that you
Je garde
selected.
deux mesures qui me plaisent. J'essaie un rendu avec des accompagnements qui sont dans la base. On peut créer son guitare au piano.
So you can edit, you can remove part of the score if you don't like it. You can pre-produce to see with some rendering. And you can complete, complement. For instance, which is a known issue for a musician, for a composer, that is from an A part to compose a B part, for instance. So here you ask the system to complement the 2 bars of melody.
J'obtiens un résultat avec trop de double croche. Donc je bouge le slider vers longue notes.
You can control, for instance, the duration of the notes, the average duration of the notes.
Je m'arrête sur une proposition. Je fais quelques modifs, une noire. Un autre accord parmi ceux qu'on me propose.
So you can edit,
je tente le vintage.
You can change
Change quelques notes. L'accord de mi mineur 7 que j'avais trouvé est bien, mais je l'avance d'une demi-mesure parce que sinon j'ai l'impression qu'il me bloque. Pas vraiment avancé, je change de note, pause. J'efface finalement la fin, mais je garde la suite d'accords en modifiant le dernier.
Oops, sorry. Aïe, aïe, aïe. What happened?
J'efface finalement la fin, mais je garde la suite d'accords en modifiant.
So what happens here? You remove the 2 last bars of the score, but you keep actually not remove everything. You keep the chords, but remove the melody, and you ask the system to generate a melody corresponding to the word context and to the chords in the style which has been selected.
Le dernier. Et je relance Composer sur ces dernières mesures. J'ai un truc pas mal, j'efface une note et je fais un rendu.
etc. So it's a very interactive process, just like a real musician is working. Actually, it's incremental. It's no more just one step generation, and there's completely interaction. It's driven by the user, by the musician. It's completely incremental. So let's see some example of real music. Actually, a CD disc, which has been created with real musicians using this system as an environment. And the melody and the harmony has been created by the system.
Starry sky, a holy day, pull a mountain high. Gods of ancient times, heroes, battle cry, lovely children shed their dreams.
So you can see the melody and the modulation is quite interesting. Actually, it's not standard, and it has been created by the system in again incremental, interactive way. And okay, so if we go back to these two approaches, the autonomous creation, where the computer will create a full piece of music, the result could be okay for the average listener, but the risk is that the result is very conventional. It's more interesting for real musician actually to help them to create music which would not be possible otherwise. And the objective is the evaluation is to please the composer and not the public, or not the public in the first place actually. And the risk is to do something surprising and at the same time, of course, meaningful. So I will I think skip the few slides about techniques, and try to start to conclude and to go back to this issue of human versus artificial creation. So at first, some issues. Deep learning is very effective. It consumes a lot of power. And so there are some works. For instance, I have a PhD student working on trying to well balance the expected quality with the computing power, and reduce as well the architecture in order not to consume too much energy and not to create too much CO2. Another issue is that actually, although the architectures get very, very sophisticated, and the loss function, that is to evaluate the adequacy of the learning, is we don't have a loss function for beautiful music. So actually, we still don't know how to control and to train the system to do interesting music at the output. And somehow, as I said, maybe it's a false problem, because the ideas would be more to help us human musicians to do interesting music. I will skip the next slide. Regarding more fundamental AI perspective, actually, a limitation of this approach is that here we learn from the created artifacts, the music which was created by humans, and we are not learning about the creation process, which would be the next step to do something more interesting. So this is the first point. So this is really for future research, still far from now. The second aspect is that we do the evaluation ourselves, but the system doesn't have yet capacity to do its own self-evaluation in a way to create its own aesthetics, right? And also a more fundamental problem, it's actually the computer system which will generate music it has no inner motivation to do that. It's doing what we ask it to do. So this is another more fundamental issue, and there's some research about motivational systems, which is very very interesting, but which is for very future systems. Maybe I will conclude with the issue of who's the author, because when you have such a music created that way, with completely by the computer or computer and human beings, who's the owner of the music? Which there's also, of course, the copyright and the money business aspect. So actually, the prior assumption is that if we go back in time, that only the human would be able to create. The animals and the artifacts won't be able. But actually, if you look at about 100 years ago, for instance, some artists, some painters started to experiment using a donkey to make a painting, actually, and naming it. And recently, using deep learning architectures from OpenAI, the GTP3 architecture, it can create. It learns from a huge corpus of text, and it created, for instance, the following sentence: "Music is the most advanced form of mathematics," which actually is very interesting. It's a deep creation, in the sense that it's not just random words, but it does resonate with us, although it's a product of machine learning based on statistics. So who's the author? Is it of the music? Is the curator, that is, who selected the corpus of examples, the computer scientist and the technician who implements the platform, the curator which selected within the samples generated, etc. So or the machine. So this is a real issue, and right now we are still governed about music creation by the Berne Convention, which states that only there should be a creator. USA Copyright Office actually goes even further, which tells that there should be a human author which participates, and it couldn't be completely automatized. And right now, there's following the Berne Convention, there's no music generated only by the computer, which has been registered in in the composers database, for instance, SACEM in France, and actually, most of musicians see the use of a computer as a tool, like using a musical instrument, or using a synthesizer, or using Ableton Live, for instance, environment to do some to real time and loop to compose music. So somehow, as usual, AI is a revealer of some fundamental issues about human society. It's also a disruptor. The current results for art generation are very impressive, although, as I said, from a musician perspective, there's still this issue of originality and the issue of the lack of structure if you use only the computer by itself. And we are just starting to learn about how to use these techniques to be to help us at doing creation. So we're still in the very early age of we need to learn how to use it. So these are a few references about this issue of creation and copyright. And I think these are the general conclusions that are already summarized. These are some reference.
I think you brought up extremely interesting questions, and they're really at the heart of cognitive informatics. The fact that you put your emphasis on interaction between the user and the device is really, I mean, in cognitive science, that's a fundamental problem, and in cognitive informatics, even more so. Many unanswered questions, of course. Real artists in all domains reuse material, and a lot of it is recombinatory. It's very, but there's recombinatory and there's recombinatory. There's recombinatory and there's boring and repetitive. And it's those two that have to be somehow sorted out. I don't know if a machine an algorithm that is judging another algorithm is able to do it. I think we have to have a little bit of intervention there as well. But I want to thank you very much for your presentation. When we get, if you send the PDF, we'll put that online as well. Your book is already online, so you were not promoting your book, you were just promoting its use, which is exactly what's the most important thing.
Perfect.
Donc, avec beaucoup de remerciements, Jean-Pierre, de tout ça. Et j'espère que je vais t'envoyer le programme. Il y a d'autres choses qui va peut-être t'intéresser si cette heure-ci n'est pas trop impossible pour toi et si tu ne prends pas demain ta retraite.
Well, thanks a lot, Stephen, for this invitation. Thanks for the deep questions. And as you said, yeah, that this issue of interaction and to learn how to better interact between this issue also for how to bootstrap a system to evaluate itself we're still far from it, but we have some ideas, but that would be interesting. And of course the computer, the way it will evaluate itself or other computers could be with a different
criteria,
different way that we are doing. Because right now we're injecting our opinions somehow, our evaluation patterns, and so it's fascinating, and we're still learning about discovering things. And again, it was an honor to participate in your seminar, and I will keep looking at the next talks for sure, and so I hope we can interact again in the near future. And I will send you the PDF. Right.
Wonderful.
So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Jean-Pierre.